Hello again, and welcome to another edition of SCLC TV. I'm your host, Maynard Eaton, of course, joined by our president and CEO, Dr. Charles Steele Jr. Dr. Steele, COVID-19 continues to be in the top of the news, a major concern, particularly to those of color. Black folks are saying now, according to many reports, that they're leery of being test dummies, test volunteers, although drug companies are looking for Black folks to be tested. It reminds you of something else in our past, does it not? This leeriness of being tested.
Absolutely. We can never forget about the Tuskegee experiment. And, Black folks, African Americans have been experimented upon and studied more than any other race of people. It's just a fact, and it goes along with the systemic lack of trust because of the proven fact that African American and people of color should be very skeptical and suspicious in terms of this government. It was the government up until the early 1970s, from 1930s up into the early 70s, dealing with the Tuskegee experiment, that we've also been looked upon as something that's less than human, I should say. We've always had this problem and never been healed from this particular aspect and the perception in this country. And the politics can't free us from this. We as human beings, fair-minded thinking people of all ethnicity and background, we must free politics. I know it's a redundancy in terms of what I say, but you have to have the repetition of repeating things in order to impact the truthfulness of what has taken place in the history of America.
But for what you've seen, what you've learned, what you know, the pandemic is impacting people of color in many, many ways, much more than the majority community. Is that not true? We're hurting the most financially.
Absolutely.
Is that a concern of yours?
Yeah, physically, financially, health-wise, economically. How in the world can we believe in this country, Mr. Eden, when we only get 3% of the loans from major established financial institutions within this country, the banks and other financial opportunities that we should have? We are only participating at a very low perception of fairness within this country. People must realize that racism is a virus, is alive and well, and we've been afraid to talk about it. I'm thinking about the historicity of education. We had no resources to travel the world to extend and to expand our knowledge in terms of the realization of what has taken place in America and the impactfulness that it has had upon the world, the universe, in terms of our academic experiences, in terms from the kindergarten all the way up to high school and ultimately college. We just read the script that was given to us. And many times, if you got off the script in terms of the best education we got from these outstanding educators in our schools, they did a great job, most of them, with what they had to work with. But it was a conspiracy within this country not to even give us the truthfulness of racism. And we just accepted this along the way because we had no other alternative. We were lynched, we were castrated, we were ostracized. I like what Doc Rivers said, the coach of the Los Angeles Clippers and former NBA player and also of the Celtics. We have loved this country so much through our lives and our experiences, but this country has not loved us back. That's it in a nutshell.
But to that point, as you see in the news media, white America, including our president, is pushing back, saying it's Black Lives Matter. They say they did a good job in many respects. What about your thoughts about what the white reaction has been to some of the demonstrations? And this?
Well, in dealing with the president and the Oval Office, they've told other lies too. They have not brought to the attention of this country to bring about the affordability of housing. We've lost 60% of our black wealth, our homes. I keep saying that. Hopefully it'll stick with the White House and other houses. But this is about action. Faith. Faith is about action. We as Christians must tell the truth. We can't be afraid. Many times you will give up the supreme sacrifice, your life, in order to tell the truth many times. Dr. King said it, gave up his life for telling the truth. Silence in the face of evil is evil itself. People in the authoritarian position must tell the truth when you know the facts. You must gather the fact and then educate the public. We live in a racist society. Racism is a virus, and we've never been healed from this, from the Caucasian race as well as African Americans.
Well, according to Bob Woodward, in his latest book, Bob Woodward, from the former Washington Post reporter, Watergate and all that, has a new book out called Rage. He claims the president did not tell the truth to the American public about the pandemic, that the president admitted to concealing the truth about COVID-19.
I'm not surprised. You shouldn't be surprised. No one should be surprised because of this leadership that we currently have from the Oval Office. President Trump has never told the truth in terms of the relationship between this country and African Americans. You don't have to go to that. Michael Cohen just came out with a book this past Tuesday. Came out with a book when he's saying that he knows for a fact that he belittled, in his opinion, of all African Americans is being less than normal in terms of all activities that we are involved in as a human being. That he was going through a community in New York and in the urban area of the ghetto of people who trying to struggle and barely making it and survive. And he said, the president said that only black folks, African Americans, can live like this because this country has always given our hands up to the Caucasian race. Don't forget about the Homestead Act of 1862. If you were white and a Caucasian, you got a hand up because this country said, we want you to be successful. If you're a person of color, if you were of the Negroid race and you worked out in the field, in the plantation, including poor people, if you was a domestic worker, we're not going to give you a hands up. Do I have to continue to give us the history of the racism in this country for people to steadily believe that we have a fight on our hand and politics cannot free us? Politics has never freed us. We have to free politics.
Mr. Trump, President Trump, also in defending his mistruth or misstatements or untruths about the COVID-19, said today that he was only using his leadership skills and to not panic America. Now, you know a little bit about leadership. You speak about leadership. Is telling a lie leadership?
Well, when you speak about leadership, you're telling the truth, first of all. That's what I'm trying to do. We have the facts, we have the research. African Americans, you're talking about unemployment. We're at 50% unemployment in the African American race. This country and the news not telling the truth when you say that we're at 16% when basically the white community is at 8%. That's a lie. That's not the truth. So it's a conspiracy within the systemic racism of America to not tell the truth. And you can't just hold this president accountable without holding all of the other mechanisms that bring about the falsifying of information in terms of this supposedly being the best country in the world that we have loved for many of years. As I repeated earlier, that Doc Rivers said, and I'm being redundant, we have loved America to death. That's why we have so many pandemics not only in terms of the virus of COVID-19, but we've always had a pandemic in terms of people of color. We've always had it, and now other folks just not discovering it. It's always been an epidemic or a pandemic.
Let's change the subject just a little bit. As you well know, our SCLC headquarters is located on Auburn Avenue, which is in the heart of the 5th District that was represented by the late John Lewis for 30-something years. There's a race on, a political race on now to replace replace representation for the 5th District. There's a special election coming up featuring Dr. Robert Franklin, Representative Abel Mabel Thomas, Kwanzaa Hall, whose father was the SCLC foot soldier. But also, there's Stephen Muhammad, a Muslim who's also running as an independent in this special election and in the November election. Your thoughts about what's happening in your backyard where SCLC lives?
Well, first of all, people have the right to run. I have no regrets or no negativity in terms of people running if they think that they have earned that right. First of all, have you earned that right? Secondly, what kind of difference can you make that hasn't been made in the past? Thirdly, what can you bring to the table and not be afraid of to talk about poor people? What I have a problem in all politics is that people never talk about poor people. They're always talking about the status quo of the middle class. Well, you in the middle, but it ain't got nothing to do with no class in terms of people of color. Yeah, we need people who are going to take care of the 75% of those who work from check to check before the pandemic and the epidemic. We have always had people in the African-American community, people of color and poor people who live from check to check ever since it's been a United States of America. We want somebody to stand up and say, we want guaranteed income for all Americans. We want guaranteed health care. You can call it socialism. You can call it humanism. Whatever you call it, let's help the people. And I'm not hung up on the titles and the descriptiveness of giving some type of negativity in terms of any kind of ism. All I'm saying, we need some survivorism, and we want to be guaranteed substantially that we're going to survive not only the pandemic and COVID-19, but we are going to survive the worst ism, and that's racism that's embedded within this country.
Has a Stephen Muhammad or Dr. Robert Franklin or Abel Mabel Thomas, have they knocked on your door asking for your support or asking for your advice?
I reserve to comment.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's a yes. This has been SCLC TV. That's our president, the coy and politically astute Dr. Charles Steele Jr. We'll see you next week.